and welcome to the first of 3 programs on digitalisation and innovation in the aviation and travel retail industry. It's all change, and the purpose of this series is to get under the skin and the pace of that change, to provide insight to key trends, as well as show examples of what is actionable now to keep the industry on the path of growth after it's taken such a hammering from COVID. Now, last year in our Future Airports from Here to Where programme series, we talked at length about how airport retail could reimagine and repurpose itself. We talked about showfields. Well, I was in Miami recently and had the opportunity to run around and film the store there, which is claimed to be the most interesting store in the world. Well, arguably, as you can see, no airport store could possibly operate viably this way with the given space. But just take a look at the experience delivered, a combination of retail and art that really works. No one leaves the store without the feeling that they've witnessed something very different in retail. And they walk out with product too. Here's the film.
Hi, welcome to Showfields. We are the most interesting store in the world. All of the brands inside are female-founded, mission-based, minority-owned, doing something good for the world. Sustainability is one of our core pillars. We want to make art accessible to a lot of the people, so welcome.
Well, as you've seen, retail is changing, and there's still much that airport retail can actually learn from the domestic market. Our marketplace has changed dramatically. I asked Roberto Graziani, CEO of 360 Duty Free, to give us his take on just how much things have changed and his view as to where the focus for travel retail now lies. Roberto, welcome. Can we just start this by first asking you the question as to how you see retail and the travel retail industry in particular, how it's evolved over recent years?
Hi, Peter, and thank you for allowing me to be here in discussing these very interesting matters about our industry. I would say that in the last decade, we have experienced a revolution, not only in travel retail, but in the overall retail sector. Revolution started with the e-commerce and accelerated with the explosion of smartphone technologies and their users. Globally, online sales are eventually going to overtake offline sales, and that will happen even faster for the typical travel retail merchandise categories. However, the continued evolution of consumer needs and expectations has pushed retailers to go beyond retail channel differentiation, focusing even more on the consumer itself. Channel focus is no longer enough to guarantee a successful long-term growth. Successful retailers today are focusing their strategies around consumer, offering them an integrated set of multiple touchpoints, channels, delivery, and payment options.
How then do you think COVID will impact these trends, and how are industry stakeholders responding?
Even though the pandemic's long-term effects in the industry are evolving, it is quite clear, as I mentioned before, that the pandemic has accelerated a change in consumer behavior and the request for additional services, such as, for example, home delivery, that will certainly transform the travel experience and will need, from an industry stakeholder's perspective, further investment in digitalisation. We all need to understand that to be successful in the future, it will be even more important to put the consumer and their needs at the center of every strategy. From what I can see, airlines and airports, despite their financial difficulties, are rethinking their business models and revenue strategies, and they are rightly shifting their investment toward digitalization to increase their level of efficiency and to enhance consumer experience, while creating the opportunity to generate ancillary revenues. Brands are certainly aware of these trends, and they are now looking for the best way to support them while managing the potential overlap between their travel retail and domestic markets.
Continuing with this thread, I asked Kevin Sajaks, CEO of Ground Control, how he thought travel retail and airport food and beverage in particular were responding to COVID, and what impact the increased introduction of digitalisation is having. It's a compelling interview. Let's start straight away with COVID. 18 months in, what's your response to travel retail's response to COVID?
I've got to say it's mixed, Peter. I think I'm very excited by the recent developments around JD.com and Lagardère, following on the back of probably 12 months ago now, Alibaba and Dufry coming together in a partnership. And I think there's some critics out there that are saying that it's the online retailer that's taking the lead in that conversation and seeing the opportunities that travel retail can provide. But ultimately, it takes two to tango. And I think there's definitely upside for both parties. So that's exciting. I think on the flip side, there's plenty of airports, retailers and operators that I believe, and some of them have actually quoted it, saying that they're simply waiting for the return. And, I think that return has been much longer than many experts initially predicted. And in my view, if you're not moving forward, you're effectively moving backwards. So I have some concern for those businesses and the industry as a result of that.
Yes, I think that's an unhealthy response, if you forgive the pun. So in real terms, what's actually impressed you most?
Well, I think aside from the strategic partnerships I've just mentioned, I think there are probably three areas that were very rapid in how the industry responded. One was in employee welfare. And I think many companies, people, individuals, we had the hashtag No One Hungry movement from the exec chef at Hamoa in Thailand. Social distancing was the second thing. I think, we had the mini greenhouses at Mediamatic Eton in Holland, and cute things like the stuffed pandas at Japan Zebu Shibotan Zoo. So I think those two, employee welfare and social distancing, and then the third thing was that I'll say the forced rapid response around digital. So QR codes, apps, customer interfaces. I think that moved pretty quickly. I think we've been talking about that as an industry for years. And I think what COVID has done is it forces people to adopt those.
I mean, have you got any evidence that shows that some of these moves have actually met with customer expectations, and even even with the reduced matters, whether or not the average spend per passenger has actually leveled, it's the same, or it's actually increased?
No, I mean, I can only probably go with the same press that you're reading, and many retailers saying that the average spend per head has increased as a result. And to be honest, I'm going to be controversial. I don't believe that it is as a result of any digital or new measures. I think what's happening is people are forced to go to airports much earlier. There's less people in the airports, so that gives you more time to browse and to shop. The brand ambassadors and the service crew actually can now engage. I've flown a few times now, and they're actually engaging with me as opposed to just get the product and scan. And I think a general excitement about traveling again. I think that's really what's driving that spend per head in the airports. Having said that, in the downtown, when we've implemented, I guess, some of these digital technologies, we have seen, on average, a 25 to 30% increase in average check. And a third of that's coming from, I guess, new and repeat purchase. So in the F&B industry, that's people just reordering on their phones because they don't have to go up, they don't see queues, they just move faster. A third is coming from upsell and premiumization. So you're selecting the premium vodka as opposed to the standard one. And a third is coming from, I guess, experimentation. And I guess if you had three burly blokes sitting at a bar, they'd probably order a beer, whereas if they can do it on an app, they might order a pisco sour. So it's actually been quite interesting to see some change in product mix as a result of the digitalization.
Well, so when you're talking about digital innovation, you're not just talking about robots, are you?
No, I mean, digital service robots were kind of introduced in 1983 in a small deli in Pasadena. So it's been around for almost 40 years, and there's plenty of, I'll call it, back of house and kitchen technology with the equipment and even automated inventory and, staffing modules and applications, etc. that I guess enhance the business's efficiency. What I'm talking about is the interface with the customer. And I think that's really where the change is happening now. I'm a huge fan of that interaction in F&B and the service, etc. But you've just got to go into a restaurant now and see how the younger generation are having their dinner. I mean, they order online, they sit there with their phones on, they eat, they're talking to their friends who are around the table, and they actually leave, get up, and say goodbye via WhatsApp. It's actually an incredible phenomenon. Now, it's not every restaurant, but it's a lot of restaurants, and it just shows how generationally people have different expectations and different experiences.
So clearly, online has become a critical element. I mean, even for F&B then.
Yeah, I think not as much as retail, but I mean, you just look at the rise of digital and what was it last year, 2020, I think 2 billion people purchased goods online. It was worth US $4.2 trillion. And online food delivery, $300 billion, and 25% of the world's population have used it. These are phenomenal numbers.
Yes.
Doesn't matter which way you look at it. And whilst I agree that there's, I'll say, less risk for F&B versus traditional retail, because ultimately you've still got to eat and drink, ignoring that interface and that interaction is something I'd be very cautious of.
So where then do you see the dividing line between digital convenience and experiential, or is it just a massive blur of that line right now?
Peter, I think we're emerging from the blur, but what we have done, whether it's obvious or not yet, is we've definitely moved to a digital-led world. Simple convenience will ultimately end up the domain of online retail, in my view. And physical retail becomes part of that experience. Probably the best, or one of the best examples, is the Nike Rise store. I mean, this is a 24,000 square foot store in Seoul, which is a combination of physical, digital experiences. You've got RFID tables comparing shoes, etc. But the unique thing, I think, is the final interaction, or the purchasing, is done on the app, and therefore the transactional part again is digital. It's not physical. So you've got the transactional process online, and then the experiential piece is part physical and part digital. And I think as an industry, we've got to be a little bit honest with ourselves. Customers don't give a damn about channels. They really don't. And the good companies like Nike realize this. They just want to talk to their customers and get them to engage with the brand, whether that's physical or digital or a combination of both. I don't know any customer that turns around, or any friend that goes, I'm going to go to the retail channel or the travel retail channel. They just go, I want that product, and here's where I'm going to get it.
So importantly, that level of depersonalization doesn't impact sales. It actually, the reverse is true.
I think it increases sales, and I think as an industry, and we've been around it for quite some time, I think we've got to grasp that the generation that are coming through want to be spoken to in a completely different way and want to be engaged in a completely different way, and that's what's going to get them to spend more. It's not the traditional, here's everything up on a wall, 3 for 2, those type of environments. I think that the consumer is quite different these days.
And the issue here is whether or not the retailers can play catch up and be on the curve, let alone, as they have been for many years, remain behind it. And it's very difficult given the existing business model that exists at airports, for example. But we'll get onto that later on. Recently, we've seen a measure of integration between food and beverage and retail in some airports. I mean, what do you see emerging from this when it comes to a potentially new commercial model?
I'm glad you've seen it. I haven't seen much of it. I've seen a fair bit moving in the downtown with, Thomas Cafe and in Burberry and Shenzhen and things like The Table, Crate and Barrel in Chicago. Airports less so. That you're right. There are a couple examples that are coming through, but again, this is not new. I mean, think of IKEA. IKEA's been around for ages, and they sell 1 billion meatballs a year, worth $2.5 billion of revenue. 30% of people come to their shops to eat, and they're quoted as saying, or the CEO's quoted as saying, that the meatballs are their biggest sofa seller. So that the concept of getting food and retail integrated is not new, and I'm a big fan of it, obviously, but I think it makes sense when you've had a good meal or a good drink or something, you're generally happier, and then when you're happier, you actually spend more, whether that's in retail or F&B, and I think that's something that there's a real opportunity there for airports to touch on, because it doesn't matter if they're happier with the F&B and go back to F&B. I think the bigger opportunity is a happy experience from a dining perspective, gets people to spend more money in the retail perspective, and that's the integration that I think there's the opportunity. In terms of the commercial model, I honestly don't think that's the driver of how the commercial model needs to change. I think it's more this evolution of digital retail is going to drive that. And if we just take the Nike store that I talked about, the Rise, there's plenty of airports I know that would love a Nike flagship in their terminal. But what happens then when the customer is paying on the app for the product that they potentially bought inside the terminal? Does the airport get a slice of that? And maybe that's an easy example. That's probably a yes. What happens if they just do all the experiential piece in store and then order that to be at arrivals when they get to their destination? Who takes a slice of that? Is that the departing airport? Is that the arriving airport? Is it both? And before you ask me, no, I don't have an answer. And I know that the tax authorities around the world are pretty much grappling with the same thing. So, but I definitely think particularly those hub airports, need to really think about that.
Just going back to your IKEA example, do you think that the weight of the meatballs determines an assessment of
size of the couch,
the size of the couch, and how soft it might be? Okay.
I'm sure there are some studies on it, Peter.
Okay. Staying with F&B, just how significant a change do you think there's likely to be on airports in the coming years?
Good question. In my heart, I'd love to say there's a significant change in the wings. In my head, I think there's not going to be as big a change as what we would like to see. It really depends on the objectives of the airports, and a lot of them, I've seen many tenders that say, look, we want sense of place, we want local operators, we want the reflecting of downtown. And then on page 2, they say we want an airport operator that's got a turnover or an operator that's got a turnover of over 50 million, have operated in 5 international airports with 6 international brands. It just doesn't work. So if people, or if the airport operators want traditional, stable, that's fine. That's a strategy, and it's a good strategy. If the airports are true to their word and they want to reflect local and they want something new and exciting, I think there has to be a blend. And we're working with a couple of airport operators that are realizing that. So there is a space for the traditional or the usual suspects, but there's also a space that needs to be carved out for that new or local reflection.
Yeah, but the odds are that most will stay with the usual suspects because they know they've got a guaranteed return. Local is great, but it's also risky.
Local's great, it's risky, and some of the big operators can operate local. It's just that final probably 10% where you really want the local operator's flair. It's usually the person, whether it's a barista, whether it's a chef, whether it's the front of house person. And it's very difficult to recreate that as a corporate. And so therefore, if I was a betting man, I'd say there's going to be maybe some morphing, but I don't think it's going to be wholesale changes.
But there have been changes elsewhere, haven't there? I mean, notably in Australia's biggest stadium. Just walk us through what's happening there.
Yeah. So just to clarify, it's Australia's biggest stadium precinct, not the biggest stadium, but ground control. We were engaged by Venues New South Wales, who have the rights and own the Sydney Cricket Ground and now the new $1 billion Sydney Football Stadium redevelopment. And what we saw there early on was a real desire to reflect a sense of Sydney, and there was nothing saying the incumbent wasn't doing a decent job, but what the Sydney Cricket Ground Trust and Venues New South Wales board realised was that consumers have changed dramatically in the last 10 years. Their experiences have changed, their knowledge had changed, and what they also realised was that F&B plays a very significant and important part of the overall experience. On the one hand, you've got all this new digital technology that means you can watch a football game or a netball game or whatever from the comfort of your own home and have thousands of different angles. Why should people be coming to the stadium and forking out their hard-earned cash? And let's face it, the tickets to a game aren't cheap. The F&B in stadiums isn't generally cheap. So how do you then elevate that whole experience? And I think that was the big ticker for us. And we've been able to secure, and I can't give away any commercial details, but arguably Australia's preeminent hospitality operator downtown to come into the stadium and operate that entire precinct. And everyone's incredibly excited about it. We're also quite nervous around certain aspects, but the ability to now go, we've now got Sydney's best operator now operating in a stadium and giving the patrons what they would expect. Everyone believes that is going to drive incremental revenue and an improved fan experience. So, the role of F&B, as I said earlier, is not just about feeding people. It's now about enhancing that overall experience, and that's what's really going to drive the revenues going forward. And it's a great test bed for airports.
Do you want to develop that thought?
Yeah, I think airports are a great opportunity to become a mirror into the city that they're in.
They claim they are.
Many claim they are, and some do a decent job, and some have restrictive factors that make it difficult. And I get all that, and I understand it. But I really do think that airports have a great opportunity to turn around and go, how do we make this space a great experience for people that are coming, going, or transiting? And part of the solution is the F&B element of it.
So moving on, what do you see as being the future for ghost kitchens and virtual brands?
I think we set aside virtual brands because I don't think they're really relevant outside the delivery channel, and particularly in an airport environment. You've got a few big brands, right? There's the Starbucks, McDonald's, Burger King. They're the big F&B brands. The rest, I'm going to say, are mainly concepts that have been created for a need, whether that's a passenger need or an airport need or something like that. It's more about the concept creation. So virtual brands I don't think really fit in the channel. Ghost kitchens, on the other hand, I think the adaptation of that is a huge opportunity. And we've spoken before, Peter, where I've said I'm kicking myself, going, why did we build outlets, 300, 400 square meter outlets, and dedicate 120 square meters to a kitchen and multiply that 5 times in an airport where there is a much better solution? And we've worked during COVID to develop those types of solutions, and we've got a couple that, if it wasn't for COVID, they would be live, where we've been able to reduce the total space of F&B or that F&B precinct by about 25%. With the same offer, the same number of units, the same menus, and obviously reduced capex. And why that's important is airports now have the opportunity to repurpose that space. They can use it for additional F&B. They can use it right now for social distancing, or they can repurpose it into entertainment precincts or more retail. And the other thing, the airport operator, which I hadn't appreciated previously, is they said, the other thing is it stops us from actually having to expand the terminal, which is obviously a very expensive exercise.
So if that reduced space delivers the same or more money, it's an absolute no-brainer for the airports.
It is a no-brainer, and that's why I think, why didn't I think of this a few years ago? So, but que sera. But I think the other thing that's exciting is the design and build techniques that we've used create flexibility, and we've developed this bespoke content management system that means you can change that coffee shop that's really busy in the morning to a bar in the afternoon at pretty much a flick of the switch. And that really increases the utilization. And it also means that you don't have operators that have a coffee shop that's humming in the morning going, I've still got to man this in the evening, and not many people want a coffee shop. They've moved on. They want a cocktail, or they want a beer, or they want something else. And I think that the ability to convert and flip in and out of concepts also provides that great opportunity to bring local in, because it removes that massive capex up front. And when I've spoken to downtown operators, that is their number one fear. It's a big capex in an environment they don't understand.
Yes.
So anything that we can do to eliminate or reduce or mitigate that concern, I think is a great solution for the industry.
One last question, Kevin. If there were three things that you wanted to tell the viewing audience about digitalization and innovation, what can and should be done in the foreseeable future, what are they? What would they be?
Number one, Peter, is to embrace it. You know, the consumer of 2022 and 2023 is not the same consumer as 2019. I've said it before, anyone who tells you differently is lying or living in the past. There have been fundamental changes over the past 2 years. Number two, don't be afraid to fail. You know, we're all entering into this environment where you've got to test and try things, but be prepared to fail and fail quickly. Procrastinating is the worst thing in this new digital age. And the third thing is seek help. You know, engage people who know about this. I've seen some airport operators, some very big retailers seek internal help, and they've done some left of centre hires, or get external help. I think as an industry, we've got to move away from we know everything to let's collaborate, let's get new people in, and let's try and propel this industry forward to the glory days again.
Now, if there's one thing that COVID has done, it's brought the whole issue of health and wellness to front of mind for everyone. We know our industry is often too slow in picking up on trends, but health and wellness is an important new category that needs to be addressed and simply cannot be ignored. Brian Chapon is CEO of Centred. His is an extraordinary story as a positive disruptor for this industry. Brian, your focus as a business is health and wellness. Now, since COVID, this category, especially in the aviation community, has become of enormous importance. That seems to be reflected in the success of your business. And I understand you now have some 40,000 partners in the space of some 18 months or so, with over 60 million members. That's phenomenal. But can you first explain what your business is and how your business model actually works? I mean, how much of a one-stop shop are you?
Thanks for having me on, Peter, first of all. It's always fun to do this with you. Yeah, it's been a crazy ride of 18 months, that is for sure. I think we've always, even before COVID, have been the guys that really tried to, I hate to use the word disrupt, in the industry of travel, but it really comes down to it more than ever. I think we're trying to raise that flag high to go, guys, you got to think differently. You got to do this differently. No one's been listening to how you put wellness and health in the center of someone's journey when it comes to travel, both within the airport ecosystem and then beyond and back home. So Centred is a brand that's been positioned to it was really created for that purpose, to put health and well-being back in the center of your journey. And we do that through different ways and means. When you're asking about, you know, products and services and one-stop shop, of the core value of Centred is to be an efficient app that handles all that in one place, so you don't have 10 apps on your phone. Everything from booking a wellness hotel to a wellness retreat to a product that has a focus. We've handpicked some of our favorite wellness brands around the world, to telehealth 24 hours a day. Our team of clinicians are experts in dealing in all types of triage issues. And so, again, it comes back to the focus of the brand. Yeah, we do a lot of things, but it comes down to it. We are a wellness and health concierge for travel. That's what we are. We're not afraid to say it. A lot of people have made over the last 18 months, when it comes to travel tech or whatever you want to call us, they're going, and not too many companies launching during the pandemic in the travel space, but we're not only proud to do it, we believe we're leading the charge here to disrupt a pretty stale industry that's been going on for too long. So, you know, when it comes to the brands, it's been a phenomenal time, because I think I've said before on your show that people were sitting around a little bored. So we had the opportunity as a team to take advantage of that and get on a Zoom call like we're doing today from all around the world, and talk about and listen to them, what their struggles are, how they're trying to get in front of the right consumer. And Centred being an aggregator, we can do that. But we build things a little differently. A lot of competitors out there, and of course in different areas from healthcare to fitness to wellness travel and so on, and concierge travel. They all had pieces of this, but what we did is we'd seen over the last 10 years, the technology wasn't too good. They didn't have direct API for user journey. Fitness industry kind of had those issues when it comes to leadership. And I think now more than ever, we look at ourselves as being a leader in the industry between fitness to crossing over to healthcare and travel.
Now, moving on, you are in airport lounges. I mean, what do you think the aviation community is missing now, whether it's airports, airlines, travel retailers, or even brands, where you can generate incremental income from them through your concierge services? I mean, just how can they grow their businesses?
Yeah, I think that's a two-part double-edged sword question, honestly. And let me just be candid with you. On the first side, let me handle two. Part one of this question really comes down to not listening to the consumer. I don't care how many people on their tablets can go around and interview people and ask them questions at an airport. Seen that, done that, doesn't really mean anything. Listening to consumer is listening to what millennials, Gen Xers, and even baby boomers want when it comes to travel. Because of COVID, anything you learned before, throw it out. It's irrelevant. The way you build your matrix, the way you build your pricing, the way you try to sell retail, duty-free, VAT, no VAT, all these things that have gone on in the world of airports, ecosystems, everything they learned needs to be thrown out. It's not going to work. Partly that's because of the way it's structured in an airport, taking 15-20% of your top net revenue in a lease. Leasing in brick and mortar was already an issue. Most people that were lucky to go into an airport, they did it, like I say, the Madison Avenue reasons. No one makes money on Madison Avenue. They do it for brand awareness. I think now you don't really have to do that as much. You can get the consumer to know your product and book it beforehand. And we do that. I mean, let's just face it. People can book something and can go to their home, their Airbnb, or their hotel. So, we're a curation. We're not trying to overwhelm people with too many experiences or brands. We really handpick the type of brands that are in line with our core values, and we're in line with their core values. So I think in regards to answering question one, it really comes down to they need to just throw out the old manual, the old blueprint, and sit at a table like this and go, let's start listening. Listening to smaller companies like us that really understand the consumer. We might be small, but we got some might in us as well. And we're not the only ones. I think the other way is our technology. Everybody's trying to create new airport ecosystem technology to attract the consumer. I don't think it's that complicated. I think if you listen to the consumer, what they want and create, you can still throw off a profit within airport retail. Obviously, every airport's going to try to do it through online and try to take some net revenue there. And there's a way you could do that, and everybody can have a slice of the pie. But it needs to come back to the focus of the consumer traveler that's traveling. Their health and well-being need to be first. And it comes to that. Once you do that, people feel there's a trust involved there, I think. And I think airports have, in my opinion, before the pandemic, really people didn't look at them as a place of trust, honestly. Not when it comes to spending. I mean, yes, VAT is great in certain airports, but that's not enough. That's not enough. So I don't know if I answered your question clearly.
What are the second part of the question? The second question.
Yeah, what we do is so simple. We don't charge a brand or even a partner to onboard onto our platform. So that's number one, and that's powerful. So we also aren't trying to overwhelm our consumers with too many options, and I think that's important. I think it goes back to, like I said in the first question, about trust. We're earning the trust of our consumers. We're earning the trust of our partners. And we're doing that by telling our brand story and getting them exposure to our 60+ million users out there. But, for us to go back to how we got 60 million users, this didn't happen overnight. This is a 7-year journey of integrating our APIs and our user journey experience into platforms and aggregators and credit card companies and banks and employee well-being programs. And with that, part two of the question is we easily can integrate quickly into an airport ecosystem. Of course, we have our own health pass that people can use and upgrade. We're HIPAA compliant. But also, I think health pass with either IATA, everybody has a health pass now. That's, big deal. It doesn't really matter. What the key issue is going back to listening what the consumer wants. And consumers want health and well-being as part of their user journey. We're always preaching at Center, putting health and well-being at the center of your journey. That's when we named our company Centered. Not only to become centered when I travel, but also it needs to be part of our journey. And so we can do that so efficiently, and we can give a really great user journey. And that either could be going into an airport lounge and having, and that's a big fight all the time for us of getting the right products and wellness and beauty services and experiences within the airport ecosystem, and then onward. And then we can show airports how to generate ancillary revenue in a way that's ethical and trustworthy. And we do that through handpicking our favorite brands. So everybody can have a piece of the pie when it comes to revenue and so on. But I think, again, it has to go back to question one. It's just we all got to sit at the table and they should start taking my calls.
Okay. So just following up, I mean, where you have been involved with this business community, I mean, what impact has it had? Have you got any research that you can share? Or data?
Well, we got so much data. I mean, the data scares me because we hold so much, but we'll never share our data. We're not in the advertising business. So that's the other thing about us. So that is a major issue when it comes to approaching an airport. Is so many people are in the data industry want to sell that data, want to track that data, want to understand everything. And I understand the importance of data, but what we are not is in the industry of selling data. Never will. We protect our data. One, our credit card companies wouldn't allow us to share that data. Two, we wouldn't anyways, because for us, it's protecting the consumer's privacy. It's protecting their personal, wants and not diswants and so on when it comes to their travel. So, in regards to data, sure. I mean, as the pandemic opened up, we started getting a lot of people coming to us because they didn't know where to travel. We were on a call the other day with another travel magazine. I can't say yet who it is, and they're like, Brian, what we really look at Centered is you becoming the brand that brings trust and clarity on where people should travel after the pandemic and during the pandemic. And I absolutely agree with them. I think Centered as a brand is to position ourselves to give you the peace of mind that it's safe to travel, but here are places you should go, here are places you shouldn't go. Here's the type of experience you should have. Maybe steer you away. And so our data is really just the bookings we've got. We've the last 60 days, we've had everything from honeymoons to even corporate wellness retreats. Remote working is something that's been massive. People keep asking us all the time. We haven't been together for 2 years as a company. Where can we go from certain parts around the world? Where is it safe? How do I deal with the health pass situation? How do I deal with vaccination cards? How do I deal with all these things? We do that all in one app. And so I'm proud of my concierge team. You know what it comes down to? There's no technology in the world that's ever going to replace human individual personalization. And I think for us at Centered, that's what makes us different. You can build all the tech you want in the world, and we have it, believe me. But our telehealth clinicians, our concierge team, and all of the Centered team is all about creating a personalized, trusted experience for our travelers. So if you're asking about data, we've seen enormous amount of bookings over the last 60 days. We believe the holiday season is going to be an important time to travel as the cold weather comes in. That's going to be really interesting. And we're positioning Centered as that peace of mind that, hey, it's okay to travel, but here's what you should and shouldn't do.
So if I just go back, where you have been in, say, an airport, what tangible evidence have you got to show that Centered actually adds value to the total experience that they offer, as well as incremental income to the individual airport?
Two things. I think the airport business before COVID, as you know so well, Peter, has always been in competition with each other. Everybody's trying to get that transit travel. So, I mean, we saw that for the last 7 years from Heathrow to Hong Kong to Singapore, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Qatar, Doha, all these guys competing with each other. And so what Centered brings is a value add there that sure, you can compete with each other, but at the end of the day, you need to listen to the user journey, what they want. And so I think what's been interesting for us is people's choice of what airport they go to. They're looking to us and going, should I fly through Dubai or should I fly through Atlanta? We all have the choice right now. With COVID, like I said earlier in the last answer I just gave you, they're looking at us to go, I really don't know where I should go on my honeymoon. I finally just got to have my wedding after 2 years of postponement or retirement party or even a work trip. Where can I go? People are leaning on us. So that's powerful data to go, well, you know what? This airport really isn't playing games with us right now. That it's not the safest place either because it's a hotspot for COVID, or it's just it doesn't really provide you the best wellness experience. So why don't you go to the other airport that does? And I don't think loyalty's changed. It changed before COVID, and it's definitely changed. There's, like I said, rewrite everything you used to know about loyalty. Ask the points guy. These guys are out there. It's like it's completely new. So the data I can give you is that our consumers are looking to us to go, I don't really care what airport I fly through. Part of it is price, but more importantly, it's comfort and health and well-being. And then when it comes to data, yeah, we've seen some pretty cool airport partners that an airport ecosystem that are starting to think about that. But where I really see it more isn't the actual airport, it's the actual brands within the airport, like some of our buddies at Rituals and other guys, that they're doing a good job of thinking about putting wellness as part, not only as part of their branding, but putting in the action.
Do you think it's really just finally on airports, it's just a question of their mindset, their existing cultures? They're just completely focused on safety aspects and health rather than the broader aspects of what people want for a healthy trip through an airport. Would that be a fair comment?
It's a fair comment. I actually think obviously that's most important. Your health and safety is what's most important when you're going through your travel journey. And I think people will make decisions based on what you said, that brand, that airport brand of making sure they're putting safety first. I think it's about efficiency. I think some airports have done a great job of testing, others have not. It's an infrastructure nightmare, right? Dealing with all that logistically. So I think the airports have done a pretty good job considering we've been in a pretty stressful circumstance. I think but it needs to go a step further. And I remember sitting in a meeting with a guy that's heavily influential in the travel business, and he didn't even know what wellness meant. He had to go ask his grandkids what wellness meant. So it's a far bigger problem of seeing something posted on a London bus or branded on social media to actually understand. And what we always like to ask is,
You're suggesting it's generational. Generational.
Generational pipeline. I've always preached a generational pipeline because one of my mentors preached that to me. And I even feel that way in my 40s that I need to hang out, and I've been doing this, hanging out with teenagers to understand how they think. I have to hang out with them because they don't think like you and I think. And that's okay. They shouldn't. So airports have kind of created a model. It's kind of like education. I can preach on that. We've all created a model on how we educate. You can't put people in a box, especially the millennial and Gen Zers. The way they've got the money to travel, people. Yes. Airports, listen to me. These guys have the money to travel. Airports model, I'm telling you right now, and I'm just going to raise the right flag, before COVID was marketing to the Chinese because they were going to go spend the money on Chanel. They would pick people up at different airports and ship them in a private car to Harrods. They built their entire model on one thing because it was generating revenue. Oops. Can't put all your eggs in one basket. And then VAT was another way to build, we built all our model on VAT or duty free. It's not enough. Gen Zers and millennials who have cash, who actually do all the bookings for their parents because their parents don't want to deal with all the technology. That's what's happening right now. You have to sit down and listen to them. And I'm telling you, we're doing that. We're listening because I'm learning all the time. Wow, I don't really understand this generation. I better sit down and hang out with them. And I'm telling you, it's that simple. And so you've got this old guard of airport, retail and airport commercial officers have been at these airports, and they've all kind of hired. It's like a family reunion where they're all hitting on each other. You've got all these people that went from Dubai to London to Hong Kong. It's all the same people. No offense. Go hire some Gen Zers and see what happens with your social media and your branding and building trust. Because I'm telling you, the old guard isn't going to do it. You're not going to make it. And airports are going to go bankrupt.
I think it's worth at this point telling the viewers that although your business has only been trading for 18 months, it actually goes back a number of years in terms of the thought process. You touched on this earlier. And last month, your company actually went public on the Toronto Stock Exchange. I mean, that's some whirlwind trip. I mean, how are you going to invest the funds?
We basically did a reverse merger. And it was the decision to do it was a no-brainer. To be a public company and to go run our mission, it made a lot of sense because of I've said before, I think our last interview months and months ago, there's never been an industry that went to zero. I mean, even fitness, still people pivoted over to online content. And so, but with the travel industry, went to zero. So the opportunity to go from 0 to a 20x return in the next 18 months, 2 years is this one. In my opinion, this probably won't happen again for a very long time. So to be a public company with a liquid stock made a lot of sense to do. But the reason we did it was there was an opportunity where I'd never seen before, and it gave us the ability to be liquid, to raise cash, and do even more acquisitions, and really comes back to supporting our brands and our suppliers. We're actually making investments into some of our own suppliers. And again, going back to building trust. And then, of course, creating even more technology when it comes to health in your pocket. We'll be announcing some of our technology that has to do with taking your medical records with you when you travel, dealing with language barriers, all these really cool things that will help you have more peace of mind when you travel again. So it was just a no-brainer to do. And we're looking at probably going out and raising some more capital within the public markets over the next 18 months, which we're excited about with our new partners. So pretty cool that it's happened. Don't think if we would ever done this if COVID hadn't happened. And funny enough, some people think that might be crazy. But again, like I said, travel is, in my opinion, is going to be a little bit dicey. We're not out of this COVID thing yet.
I want to go back to some of the values of the business and what drives the business. I mean, what are the principles that lie behind your strategy? I mean, on margins, for example.
Principles on margins. Well, I think that's a great question, because I think one of our values of our business is we weren't going to get into the advertising business. So we weren't going to charge up front to have a brand onboard onto our platform. That's just never going to happen. We felt, and that was funny enough, a decision I was going to make before COVID. And then with COVID, there's no way I could charge a fitness studio, an onboarding fee, right, $2,000-$3,000, and then expect them that they should when they're struggling. And so when it comes to beauty brands, services, and so on, and some people, I used to hear people say if it's free, people don't respect it. But to be honest with you, if you do it right, it can be not only respected, it can be a powerful partnership and a powerful collaboration. So, our margins average between 20%, 25%, give or take. We don't gouge like competitors do when it comes to commissions. But what we want is, I like to say, the Horst Schultz model. Horst Schultz was a wonderful, wonderful man who's a hotelier in his own. I think he took over the Ritz-Carlton at 3 hotels and grew it to what it was, and then retired, started Capella. Repeat business, winning the customer over.
Just developing points you made earlier, there is some serious tech behind the business, but it's also humanized. Another point that you registered. I mean, and I know that there is a new AI-based product which you've actually recently introduced. I mean, it's beauty tech in extremis. Again, this is something that the travel community could easily tap into. Just tell us more about it.
I love that we're ending with this. Yes. You asked earlier, I was kind of saving of how we can add value to the airport ecosystem. What we did is we did an acquisition joint venture with a wonderful group of people out in France, and started developing together AI technology that started out in the beauty industry, because people were looking at when it comes to matching you up to a salon or service, but why not matching you up to the right product based on your skin color? And so we dived into the beauty business, and it's AI tech that scans your face either through your phone, or we have our own mirror that we'll be installing in airport lounges. We'll be installing in salons, and you could even install it within the airport ecosystem. And it helps generate revenue, because obviously the airport will take revenue off that product. It's an ancillary revenue stream because it's very cheap to install, so the onboarding cost is very small. But more importantly, it goes back to the consumer. It is an incredible consumer experience, because our skin changes every 45 days. I am not an expert on beauty. I've learned all this partnering with the beauty experts here. So I am not the beauty expert, but by any means. And then it then recommends the right product. And what's powerful for us, it recommends our brand partner products. And so it's just a really cool thing. But it also not only does a recommendation of products, we're focusing on your hair care as well as your body. So the health component to this as well, we can scan your body. We're about to do a 3D imagery where you can actually do a workout Could even do it in the airport lounge where you could actually do a virtual workout or stretch. We've got content with our brands that it's their brand that's actually doing the workout, not centered, which is just really cool. So we're taking it to other levels where we do, like you said earlier, it's humanized, it's personal, but it's got pretty cool tech to scan and do and do all the AI stuff.
I can see that's got to be of some real interest to this business community, that's for sure. Bring all the threads together. I mean, your strategy is clearly one where you want to be the go-to app for wellness products, regardless of the category that you've referred to. Your growth has been extraordinary. I mean, where do you go from here? How many members do you need or want?
We're just getting started. Again, it comes back to your questions. We want to change the airport ecosystem. We want to help airports. We can do that with clever ways that don't cost a lot of money to do ancillary revenue. But we're just getting started. You know, for us, is we could have 200 million people using the app and it's changing their daily lives, and we're winning. And it's just one person at a time. You know, our mission is to be in every single travel and wellness transaction in the world, one partnership at a time. That's our mission. And I'm proud of our team. We're doing it, you know, one day at a time.
But you have to be flexible as a business.
You know, my story as an entrepreneur, you know, you just got to be flexible. But we're pretty excited. I think coming out of going into the fall, I'm really excited about October through December going into the new year. I think people are already using. Oh, by the way, our app is in the app stores now. You have to have a code. And we'll be happy to share that code with you guys through Peter only when he's ready to share that. But yeah, it's we're just getting started. We just want to get better and better at what we do. And again, go back to changing the user journey and putting health and well-being at the center of it.
Well, I tell you, Brian, I think that centered is going to be difficult to be ignored by the business community. I mean, one final question. If there were 3 things that you wanted to advise this business community, what to do to better harness the health and wellness opportunity, what would they be?
Very good question. And it's hard to answer that because there's so many. It depends on my audience.
3 key ones would do.
I think the number one, I've said this already a couple of times in this interview, is start listening to the younger generation. And I don't just mean hiring them and check that off the list, but actually listen to them. Because they probably have way more value than you could ever think, especially when it comes to the airport leadership. That's number one. And number 2, executing on what they say. I think, again, the old guard needs to go away. We've seen a few airports that literally it's the same people that have been there 25 years. No offense to them, time to take your pension. What I'm talking about here is the limits on you know, doing the same old thing and still thinking you're going to get the same result. That's the theory of chaos, right? That's not going to work in changing the travel experience. And that's the same that goes for credit card companies to big airports or even big Fortune 500 companies. It's the same principle. You've got to start realizing it's not about the age of that C-suite person that you might be bringing on. It's about how they think. And
taking those risks. I like that you brought
that up. I think you have to take some risks. I'm about calculated risk taking. I'm not doing reckless risk, but I think you have to sit at the table and listen to people and go, okay, how can we actually come back to being a brand or an experience that's actually going to help people?
Yeah, nobody's arguing for wholesale change, but they are. But I think what's the market dictates right now is measurable change, not minuscule change. So what's the third element that you would strike up?
Well, I'm going to be a little bit biased here. I think you need to come call me, take my phone call and listen to what Centered has for you.
I should have given you that platform.
Yeah, because the reality is it's the truth. I think we've built something that airports can plug and play right now and make revenue immediately. We know it. We can do that, but also airlines are the same way. You know, airlines, airports, and even bigger brands. We have a platform that can generate ancillary revenue that's never been created before, and it's something that goes back to, like we said earlier, about the brand is making it efficient and easy as possible. And again, it goes back to doing what our team's doing every day is building trust. And so for me, that definitely is my third.
A great point on which to end the interview. Brian Chapman, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Now, there can be little doubt that 360 Duty Free are at the very cutting edge of innovation within the travel retail industry. 2 years ago, they rebranded themselves. This next feature gets under the skin of the business, and you'll hear from Benny Clayback, founder and chairman, Roberto Graziani, CEO, and Alex Anson, COO. Now, this is a business that knows what it takes to provide what customers actually want today, harnessing technology through digitalisation. As you'll see, we cover a lot of ground: the state of the industry, the offline-online model, omnichannel, and a whole lot more. Benny, can we start by you walking us through briefly the history of DFAS and taking us through the rebranding exercise to 360 that took place a couple of years ago? Just what drove this?
Hi, Peter. Ever since we started the company in 1987, our vision was always to be at the cutting edge of innovation, and we put a lot of time and effort into that. Particularly in flight, we've been successful for many years, but the industry evolved, and more importantly, customers' behaviors have changed. Do we continue on the same trajectory, or do we move up a gear and align ourselves with the future trends we are anticipating? We decided it was clearly time for a change. After months of collaborating with highly respected industry leaders, we shifted towards the new direction, becoming 360 duty-free and more.
What then were the most significant changes that took place as a result of this decision?
Peter, the decision to rebrand wasn't just about a name change or a new logo. 360 represents 360-degree transformation on how we approach our business. It embodies the breadth of our operation and the limitless opportunities of the future. And beyond the new name, we placed a lot of thought into the vision and mission. We climb higher to see wider isn't just a mere slogan. It describes how we leverage our strengths to drive cutting-edge innovation and create sustainable value for our airports, our airlines, and more importantly, our consumers. In order to execute this vision, we made significant improvements to our organizational capabilities and expanded our business by upskilling our talent pool and bringing on highly respected industry professionals. Additionally, as you know, we reached an agreement with the Schiller Group to become a shareholder of 360, and the partnership has strengthened our reach in becoming a world leader in global retailing, ready to compete for all future opportunities in the airport and omnichannel business.
What then do you see as the role of retail and in-flight?
To be successful today, you need to go beyond retail channel differentiation and focus your strategy around the consumer, offering them an integrated set of multiple touchpoints, channel, delivery, and payment options. The line between digital and face-to-face channel are increasingly blurred, and the role of the physical store is shifting away from just product distribution to a much more experience-centric model where staff has become a vehicle to truly engage with shoppers and for brands to make their mark with immersive functionality.
Yes.
In summary, the role of the traditional duty-free bricks and mortar store has not become redundant at all. However, it has to transform itself to deliver the content and the experiences consumers are now looking for.
Here's a two-part question. Where do you think omnichannel is actually being done well? And what challenges must we overcome as an industry to take advantage of this opportunity?
Let me start from the challenges. Availability of relevant data is certainly the main challenge to deliver a successful omni strategy. And the most relevant data available to target travelers are owned certainly by airlines. That's why we believe that partnering with them is paramount to deliver an efficient and effective omni business model. And to go back to the first point of your question, where this omni business is delivered quite successfully, I can mention our partnership with Singapore Airlines. I believe it is a clear example of how such strategy can be successful.
Yes.
There are then other organizations that have relevant database for our business, and we are also discussing with them how to develop a partnership that could allow us to use this data in an efficient and an effective way, and clearly in full respect of all privacy law. To summarize, Peter, availability of data and capability to partner, having the consumer at the center of the strategy, are really the key points to succeed.
Do you think that the days of the traditional duty-free multi-brand store are now over? And as a follow-up to that, what do you think the modern store should now look like?
That's a very good question, Peter. And in short, no, the days are not over. However, we have been seeing for about a decade a decline in spend per pax. And at the same time, many millions have been invested in large stores, walk-through stores, which at one time were thought to be the panacea of travel retail, that have become less effective, less productive than they were once considered to be. So no, it's not over, and we've got this real estate, but it's probably not working as hard as it should be. And if we cast our minds back again to domestic retail and consider that travel retail tends to be following, in some respects, domestic retail, we saw this land grab in domestic retail 20 years ago, but we also saw for the last 10 years surplus space domestic retailers the world over. They didn't know what to do with. You only have to see the demise of malls in the US. You only have to see supermarket chains put in everything from play groups to spas in the supermarkets. And I think some of that is going to play out in some of our airports. Now, we focus on the fact that retail should be about experience, and we understand that, because you can't do a skincare consultation online very easily, for example, right? But clearly you can't fill a 3,000, 4,000 square meter walk-through store with experience, not at least with just the categories that we've got. So no, it's not over, but equally, whilst experience is part of the answer, I don't have the rest of the answer. I wish I did. Otherwise, we'd be working on different solutions to fill that space. But I think as an industry, we're going to have to work it much harder.
But some of the answer, surely, arguably, is the fact that retailers and airports themselves need to actually take more risk. There has to be an element of that, and we know, for example, historically, that some players have budgeted maybe 5% of their budget or their space to a risk. Does that surely now not need to increase?
Sure, and I think, as you know, the P&L that travel retail has is finely tuned, finely balanced between how do we get sufficient consistency and sufficient, comfort to be able to give the landlords, the airports, the requirement that they have from the space that we utilize, whilst continuing to push our boundaries. And travel retail has, to a large extent, been driving innovation, bringing new brands. It stopped from being a following market to being a leading market, certainly for a lot of perfume cosmetics houses who have seen this channel as a recruitment ground, especially for Asian customers and so on. So there's risk that is being taken, but it is a finely tuned balance, so to speak, between playing with what is going to pay the bills and pay the rent, and taking that risk and bringing innovation. And I think we may need to think innovation in a different way. We might need to think of innovation beyond the existing categories that we know so much about, and try to take that to another level. I don't know what that means. As I said, if we look at what's happened in domestic, that model's changed quite a lot. Where will travel retail follow? We will see in the next 10 years.
Well, I think it's going to be sooner than that. You look at businesses like Showfields in New York, you look at what Nike have done very recently, and that really is an expression of difference in real terms. That is and will make money. Do you not think the consumers are ready for that now?
I think they're ready. I mean, we're seeing, but Are we in the industry ready to monetize those opportunities in a way that balances the risk and reward? And are we ready to walk away from those many thousands of square meters that have already been developed or are coming on pipeline? I'm not sure we are everywhere.
But do you see a change in the system, just put the mag to one side for a moment, where the idea of a joint venture between retail and airport becomes manifestly a better option these days?
Absolutely, and I think that's a conversation that's been had all the time since COVID. It is the best solution in travel retail, that partnership model, a partnership model that gives the airport comfort that the travel retail operators absolutely aligned to delivering the best possible results, and with a transparent model that they know that nothing's been left on the table, whilst at the same time for the travel retail operator to know that the airport has got their back, that in that transparency there's integrity to get to successful medium-term win-win solutions. And if as part of that model there is more opportunity to take more risk, that is the right environment in which to do it. And there's been many examples in the industry where that's happened, where an airport with the travel retail operator have wanted to create experiences or bring local brands or create showrooms that have really created either a sense of place or brought a local experience, whatever it might be. Those examples have lived, but that would otherwise not live if it was a pure concession model.
I can see retailers having the airports back, but who's got who supports the airports themselves? Because they could be fairly spineless in this, precisely because their shareholders, whether they're governmental or private, aren't prepared to take the risk because they've been so spoiled for so very long.
I hear your challenge, Peter, and I think first and foremost I'd like to recognise that the large majority of airports around the world have been exemplary in the relationship management that they have undertaken during COVID crisis. Certainly our experience with the majority of our airports has been fantastic, as I'm sure many travel retail operators would echo. MAG relieves and different contract conversations without which, quite frankly, travel retail would have collapsed. So I think we need to give them credit, and personally I'd like to thank our airport partners for how most of them have supported us. Because to your point, they've also got their financial challenges behind them, whether it's in bonds or whether it's whatever the private or public ownership structure looks like. And in some countries like the US, they've benefited from significant government support. In other countries, that's not been the case. I believe the UK hasn't had anywhere near the levels of government support that the US government has given to the airport infrastructure. So let's give them some credit. And yes, without them, we wouldn't be here in many respects. How does that move forward? Well, fortunately, airports have got very long-term infrastructure plans, and they can better weather 1 or 2 years in a 30 to 50-year horizon than a travel retail operator who may only have a 5-year contract. And I hope that these partnerships stand us in good stead so that we can pay it back to the airports, and that these partnerships will pay it forward in the outer years of these agreements.
Just want to go back to the airline business and about the role of in-flight retail and carts. Are they now dead?
I think it's fair to say that it's been death by 1,000 cuts. More airlines coming out of the in-flight program, more in-flight programs having a reduced presence. They're not dead. There is, and I believe there will always be a role for in-flight, a last-minute offer. Last minute being, I've forgotten my favourite liquor brand, or I'm a smoker, my cigarettes because I'm going on holiday.
So a case of need.
A case of need, last minute, or last minute gifting. I really must buy something for the person picking me up at the airport. I forgot to do it. But ultimately, the future for in-flight is omnichannel retail, and the future is here now. We are living this future, and we're accelerating, bringing forward this future to today. And we're doing that. For example, best in class example would be what's happening with Singapore Airlines and our partnership there with Omnivo as an enabler to deliver a best in class omnichannel solution. This is happening to such an extent that, quite frankly, even if we now had in-flight sales, this would now be the predominant channel in this relationship, in this business. So, in summary, Peter, in conclusion, yes, it's dying, but it will not die. But we already have the phoenix that rises out the ashes, and it's a phoenix that we believe can leapfrog the airport experience. Once more, coming back to working with the airlines who own the passenger, working with that passenger data to be able to tailor solutions to that passenger before they fly, when they return, and give them solutions, be it collect on seat or home delivery, to a large extent will leapfrog these thousands and thousands of square meters that are sitting in airports that are becoming less productive, aligned to what the passenger is looking for.
Well, that's very elegantly argued, but the question I have to ask is that, why aren't they coming to your party in their droves right now?
The answer is back to three key points. Airlines have been focused on survival. Right now, whilst they would want those ancillary revenues, most importantly what they want is to be back in the air with their fleets back to somewhere where they were in 2019 and to some extent having to pay back some of those bailouts or some of those loans or whatever those solutions that they've had to take up to survive. That's the first point. Secondly, in getting back up in the air, they've got to provide the most basic components, and they've got to provide them to a decent customer or passenger experience. And that could be as simple as just giving a passenger a bottle of water, which many domestic airlines in the US don't do. Crews are not comfortable with the level of human contact. So get back in the air, provide some basic customer experience that we really need to do. And thirdly, once those basic needs are fulfilled, we are looking for partnership solutions that will allow us to give airlines what I've just described in a way that isn't burdensome for them, but gives them the benefit. And once more, that can only come because of the solution, the IT platform is right, because we can give benefits, and we can do so without burdening them with any more responsibility.
I mean, you're doing the investment principally, and they're the happy recipient, but actually it seems to be a bit of a no-brainer because what you're delivering to them is real, genuine, incremental income that they could never previously tap into, precisely because of the platforms you offer.
Completely agree with you, Peter.
Yes, you would.
And we've been out on the road trying to, work with our key airline partners, and I'm pleased to say many of them believe and support exactly what you've just highlighted. We recently announced an extended partnership with Virgin Atlantic, an airline that prides itself in passenger experience. We're partnering with Omnivo, bringing their platform, which will allow us to bring the world's leading brands into a world-leading airline to provide a world-leading experience in that omnichannel market. So, I trust more airlines are seeing the opportunity, certainly our key partners, but also potential new partners, to buy into that holy grail.
One last question, Alex. If there were three key trends you think that were common to the business community that could be adapted and adopted in the next 12 months, what would they be?
Thank you for putting me on the spot there, Peter. So, first and foremost, we're all trying to survive. I think we've all got solutions that have got us this far, or not all. Many operators that are here is because they've got solutions that have got us this far, but we are far from out of the water. If we see, without going into too much detail, there are some markets that are still not seeing much international traffic. Here in the US, international traffic is about -80 to 2019 still in many airports. Asia has been largely locked down, is only just beginning to open up. We've heard this week that Singapore will begin to accept passengers from Hong Kong and Germany and so on. So I think survival remains critical first, call it a trend or call it a priority. Secondly, I think as big a threat to survival is the conditions under which we recover. Because if airports think because we're at 20, 30, 40, 50% of traffic that we had in 2019, that all is good and we can go back to what we had in 2019, then that is going to be worse than where we are today. And I think that talks to how do we continue to nurture and partner these relationships so that we have long-term sustainable solutions. And I know that's a priority for all of us, certainly a priority for me in making sure that my airport partners and my airline partners understand how this will evolve over the next couple of years. You know, one swallow does not make a summer, one summer does not make a revival. And thirdly, I think fundamentally on that journey, we all talk about what will our contractual terms look like when they come to tenders and getting more sustainable solutions. Those tend to be the three hottest topics. There are of course other trends, other concerns. Labour is a concern the world over. I was at the AXC conference last week in Dallas, and we're hearing stories that some concession operators, you know, can't fulfill the roles even though the traffic's there, because the labour market is just not allowing us to recruit the people we need. Airports can't get bus drivers to ferry people from car parks. So it's impacting everywhere. You know, TSA, you know, security is recruiting like crazy. You know, lines aren't fully open because we're struggling to recruit. That's a key topic that's out there. And another key topic that's out there is certainly inflation, and how is inflation impacting everything from ultimately, you know, capital expenditure projects to just, you know, simply the cost of goods that we're seeing and how we're all going to navigate that. But I would call out survival. I would call out how do we maintain that survival over the recovery, and I would call out how do we have sustainable long-term relationships, and how does that play out through tenders as the most important, whilst we navigate these short-term labour challenges and inflationary challenges, which I'm sure we will find solutions to, but of course there's bumpy roads ahead.
And I guess you may have missed out one other item, which is bang on your agenda, where there can be investment, there will be investment in digitalisation.
Absolutely, Peter, and that's the story, the key story that we've been sharing with our key partners. 360 has invested, continues to invest, and will invest with our partners to deliver those omnichannel solutions or to deliver those standout retail opportunities. We have and continue to do so. We are a long-term partner for our partners, and that's demonstrated in our actions.
Paul, welcome. Just how important is digitalisation to your business? We know that you've recently extended your contract with 360 and Omnevo for 5 years, but how much of an impact do you anticipate omnichannel will have on your business, and how does it sharpen Virgin Atlantic's competitive edge?
Hi, Peter. Great to have the opportunity to be with you today to talk about these topics. So I would say that, you know, one of the top priorities for the business right now is the transformation of our end-to-end digital journeys and experience. And the omni-channel platform that we're looking to build with 360 and Omnevo is a huge part of that. It has massive potential for the future of our retail proposition, in that it allows us to drive a much better and more personalised shopping experience for our customers, a much wider product range, and a greater proportion of pre-order sales versus sales on board.
So when you talk about a wider range, you're effectively talking about a much more extended catalogue and wider categories.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we have a much better omni-channel platform, and we're driving more sales through pre-order and through home delivery, you can offer a much wider range of products. Because if you're just selling on board, you're really limited by the space that you have in the retail carts, and having a good kind of omni-channel platform takes that constraint away.
Well, that's it for this programme. In Programme 2, we'll be featuring Dufry Hudson's Just Walk Out store and be hearing from Kappa Centre for Aviation, Virgin Atlantic, Omnevo, Portland Design and White & Mackay. Another full programme covering key trends and showcasing what is doable now to help drive the aviation sector back to robust profitability. See you in a few weeks.